Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, how about two former speakers of the House sharing the same jail cell? What's that about? Stay with us and you'll find out. Plus, the value of a college degree, all of that and more following these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back. Well, listen, you won't. Well, first of all, let me introduce the folks on the panel today. We have two of the state's leading journalists. We have Tony Romeo. He's with KYW and KDKA Radio, and Brad Bumsted with the Pittsburgh Tribune-Review, journalists both. All right, look, Brad, I want to start with you. Let's start with this past week, a conviction of another legislative leader, in this case, a Republican state senator from western part of the state where your coverage for your newspaper is, 2.5 to 10 years for Jane Orie.
Yeah, the former Senate Majority Whip. She was at one time the third-ranking leader in the Senate and the highest-ranking woman in the legislature. And she was convicted of using public resources for campaigns, using her staff to campaign for her sister for the Supreme Court. Her sister is Supreme Court Justice Jane Orie Melvin, who has also been charged. 9 criminal counts, as I understand yes.
it. Go ahead.
And as you pointed out, actually, in a blog item, it's the first time in state history that anybody knows of 3 sisters being charged with public corruption, at least in Pennsylvania.
And Tony, it's not even in Philadelphia, right?
How about that? Huh?
Yeah. So we've got the third sister. Now, the trial for Jane Orie Melvin has not yet occurred.
Preliminary hearing hasn't even occurred.
That's right. And we got Sister Janine, who worked for the Supreme Court Justice. Are you getting all this out there?
On the Superior Court.
I'm sorry, on the Superior Court, right, for like something like 1997 and 2010. And the charge against her is?
Basically that she ran Jane Orie Melvin's campaigns out of the office.
Yeah. All right, well, we're going to follow that. This is intriguing. So one has been sentenced, convicted and sentenced. 2 more trials to go for Sisters Janine, a staffer for her sister, Jane Orie Melvin, the Supreme Court Justice who's been suspended. Is that right?
That's correct.
And we'll find out whether she's getting paid or not. Is that still, she's getting paid at the moment?
I don't know the status of that. I believe she is.
I think she is. All right. Tony Romeo. Bill DeWeese, a former Speaker of the House, convicted of very similar charges. And John Purcell, another Speaker of the House, also convicted. Is a little different on the stuff that he did, but basically public corruption. What are they doing at the moment?
Well, according to CapitalWire.com, they are sharing a cell at the prison in Camp Hill, which they will not be there permanently. Right. They will eventually be sent to different facilities.
I'll tell you, we're talking about first in Pennsylvania. First of all, we've had 2 speakers. We had one convicted in the 1970s, Herb Feynman. Now we have 2 of them convicted, all within about a 2-year time span. Do I got that right?
Yeah, and the fact that they are sharing a bunk, apparently, went national. I saw an ABC story on it. And look, this is really the political odd couple, being put in together. Right. And it just makes you wonder if they're in there plotting the takeover of the administration to place it under the Philadelphia Parking Authority.
There you go. Now, they didn't agree much. You covered them. They were kind of, one's a pretty liberal Democrat, and the other one is, Purcell, pragmatic Republican, wouldn't you say? A deal maker?
Well, yeah, I think he had a lot to do with things that got done during the period of the Rendell years when you had a activist Democratic governor and a Republican-controlled legislature. I think in particular, the gambling bill, he had a lot to do with.
All right, before we leave the subject, we've got one more to go. Former Representative Stephen Stetler, York County, former House member, who will stand trial very soon, maybe even this week. Coming up,
go ahead. Pick the jury.
Pick the jury.
And the trial starts, I think, the following week. And Steve Stetler always had a great reputation when he was in the legislature. He became Revenue Secretary under former Governor Rendell. But he's charged with some of the same things that these others are, using public resources for campaigns that he wouldn't the allegation is he wouldn't go to a private system of you doing opposition research and sending people out in the field. He's accused of still using state staff to do that.
And I should point out, the last we heard, the investigation by the Attorney General is still ongoing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, the issue is whether it goes to the Senate, because the Attorney General and the new Attorney General, since Governor Corbett, taken another office, then Attorney General, nothing has happened with the Senate with the Attorney General. Senators have been prosecuted.
There's no evidence of it. No.
Okay, no evidence of it. All right, when we come back, Governor Corbett is proposing this huge tax break for Shell Oil, $17 billion spread over 25 years. Very controversial. I'm going to ask the reporters where they think that will go after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by BetterSaferRoads.com. To voice your support for safer highways and less traffic congestion, visit BetterSaferRoads.com. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Welcome back with a duo of reporters, Tony Romeo and Brad Bumsted, the host, who never makes a mistake, made one. It should be $1.7 billion. Shell and the other oil and chemical companies, would love it, right, Tony, if they got $17 billion. What do you think?
They can give me $17 billion if they want.
Yeah, that's true. All right, go through the details of this. This came sort of out of the blue, right? Even though apparently there have been ongoing discussions privately about this. Tell our viewers a little bit about this.
Well, yeah, it emerged this week that the administration, as part of its efforts to woo Shell to build the facility in western Pennsylvania, is offering this tax credit of, it's actually $67 million a year for a 25-year period. Yeah, would not actually start, I think, until 2017. And of course, critics immediately pounced on it as another, giveaway to big corporations. The administration's response is, hey, we had to compete with Ohio and West Virginia to land this facility. And I thought it was very interesting, the muted response of the Democratic leaders in the House and Senate. The minority leader in each of the House and Senate are from western Pennsylvania, and they're not criticizing the deal, just at this point saying they want more information.
Do you think they're, Brad, do you think they're enticed by the jobs? I mean, make no mistake about it, we're talking about a lot of jobs here,
10,000 to 20,000 jobs.
Wow.
Counting the spinoff. The rap on Corbett about this right now is that how can he come up with this money when he proposes cutting education and social services? How could you do this? Well, let me tell you that if Governor Corbett had not offered this and West Virginia or Ohio had and got the Shell plant to locate there, Corbett would be roundly criticized right now for not being aggressive enough to get these jobs.
So you think in some way he's in that proverbial, Tony, catch-22 where he has to do something? I read somewhere where they're trying to get, if they get this done, that Shell would not do something in Ohio, maybe drill more or stake out new claims to new land. Maybe I misread that. But at any rate, is the governor, do you think, going to tie this to things lawmakers want? This looks like it could be one of these classic deal makers. He gets, they get a restoration of all the cuts to basic ed, higher ed, and county human services. He gets this. Boy, it smacks of...
I didn't see it as a horse trading opportunity. Okay. Maybe Brad has a different view of it. But I definitely think that it's a catch-22 for any governor in this situation. I think Brad is absolutely right. If we had lost this plant to Ohio, the same people who are criticizing, many of the same people who are criticizing him, would be criticizing him for that. I think you saw that in the Democratic leader's response, not coming out and criticizing him and pointing out the statement from the Senate Democratic leaders was, look, we already praised you for landing this deal. I do think that you can curse the system, which creates the situation where states are competing and have to offer these what you might call sweetheart deals, but that is the reality. So what's a governor to do?
Yeah, he is. Go ahead.
Well, another point on this too. It's not just liberal groups that criticize this type of tax break for companies. Conservatives, like the Commonwealth Foundation, are against what they call corporate welfare, and they would rather see across-the-board tax cuts for business, not picking and choosing winners, as this appears to do.
Yeah, I guess the other argument is that this is, according to some, and I've not confirmed, I mean, just in terms of the reporting, the world's second largest corporation, they made something like $31 billion in profits. And so that argument is also being used as a reason not to do this, right?
Well, of course. Again, though, the problem is the system is what it is. To me, it's very similar to pro sports teams that threaten to leave cities unless taxpayers pay for stadiums. It's like, what do you do?
That's a good analogy. That's a good analogy.
And people hate that. It makes them gnash their teeth. But on the other hand, are you going to be the governor who loses the Steelers or the Eagles?
That's right. And as both of you have covered these stories over the years, in order to get them to stay, you have to fork up millions and millions of dollars to build stadia, right?
And it's also hard, I think, for some to criticize because, after all, many of Corbett's critics are complaining that everything right now we're doing should be about jobs, jobs, jobs. Well, this is about jobs.
Yeah, and in a best-case scenario, this is a company that's not just going to come in and locate. It's going to be, as Revenue Secretary Dan Muser says, a magnet for other companies to come in and locate near it, because what they do is take natural gas and turn it into ethanol, which is then used in making plastics and tires and shoes and all sorts of other things.
And I believe this tax break has something to do with buying gas, natural gas extracted from Pennsylvania.
Right.
So the idea is to reward not just Shell, but the people who are extracting the gas.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about some aspects of liquor store sales that come in, something we've talked about before, and we'll catch up on the budget after talking about money. We pay some bills.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Welcome back with Brad Bumsted and Tony Romeo, both journalists covering the Capitol, among other beats. All right, there was something that emerged this week, Brad, that I had not heard before. As you know, there have been efforts now going back to Dick Thornburg, to sell the liquor stores, unsuccessful, to privatize them. The governor, Corbett, would like to do it. Some lawmakers would do it. They've had trouble getting it through the legislature. But there was a new wrinkle that's worth commenting about. What is that wrinkle?
Maybe more than a wrinkle. As the House was poised to perhaps vote on it last week, the union representing state store clerks announced that they reached a new contract that extends for 4 years and includes a clause that says that any private employers, which you would have if you get rid of the liquor stores, would have to employ union workers. And they believe that
Sheetz at Turkey Hill or
Wegmans
would put liquor in there they would get a license, they would have to finish my thought.
According to Wendell Young, the head of the union, they would have to hire union workers. But the Corbett administration said they're fantasizing that there's no way that you can require private employers to hire union workers. Clearly, it sets up the possibility of litigation over a year or two.
Should it pass?
Yeah.
All right, before I let you guys go, Tony, the budget, the Senate sent over to the House a budget restoring a good bit of the higher ed, basic ed, and county human service budgets. Where does that stand?
Well, as it stands as we speak at this moment, the House and Senate seem to be on board with the spending bar set by the Senate, even though the House Majority Leader continues to characterize it, as the governor does, continues to characterize the Senate spending level as a ceiling. The House Majority Leader has indicated he's pretty much on board with the spending level set by the Senate. However, the governor, when he says ceiling, seems to mean that's as absolutely as much as I want to go, and I don't want to go that high. So it seems like we've got the legislature at this level and the governor who wants to spend less.
All right, I hope to have the governor on the program next week, and if I do, we'll see. I'm going to ask him that. I'm going to ask him about some of these other things that we've talked about. All right, the value of a college degree. Our friends from the Credit Union Association are here. We'll find out, does it matter?
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
Hi, welcome back. Well, joining me as often is the case is Mike Wishnow. He's a senior VP at the PA Credit Union Association, and Bob Marquette. He's the head of the First Federal Credit Union. All right, guys, look, there's a lot of controversy right now about college education. 1 out of every 2 recent college graduates, unemployed or underemployed. But you all think there is still value in a degree. Mike, let's start out with you. Value, first of all, because over the course of a lifetime, a lot of income differentials.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. With an advanced degree, mean income is $82,000 a year. With a college degree, it's $57,000 a year. And for a high school grad, it's about $30,000 a year on average in Pennsylvania. So clearly, I mean, you can almost double your wage with a college degree over the long term. And when you add that up year upon year, the value is clearly there.
And the other thing, and I got to be careful as a lifelong college professor, you might think I have a vested interest in this, but you also take a look at unemployment data and you find that less education, more likely to be unemployed, right?
That's absolutely true. People with a bachelor's degree or higher have a 4.7% unemployment rate. Some college or associate degree, 8%. High school graduate, 9.8%. Not a high school graduate, 15.5% unemployment rate. So there's absolutely a correlation.
Yeah, I've noticed that over the years, just in the studies that I've read, obviously because of what I do for a living. And I used to say, that's at least one reason. Now, we're in a tough economy, and we do need people in science and engineering. There are jobs to be had, right? You guys know this, in this economy, but it has to be in the right fields. All right, one of the concerns that a lot of people have expressed has to do with college costs, Michael. They continue to skyrocket, and I want to tie that to, what students should do when they're thinking of going to college in terms of getting loans and paying for it. Well, talk a little bit about college costs.
Sure. Well, college costs grow exponentially each year. They typically outpace inflation. At the same time, the student loan landscape has changed tremendously over the last 2 or 3 years. And Bob really, from his credit union's perspective, knows that better than I. You want to talk about the student lending landscape?
There is a big gap with student lending. Right now, all guaranteed student loans, both the PLUS and the Stafford, they go through the federal government direct. That happened back in 2010. But there's also private student loans that are being offered. Credit unions are a natural player in the private student loan market because they're usually held in portfolios. Many other financial institutions that used to offer private student loans would sell them on the secondary market. Mm-hmm. And that's,
so let me go through this with you. So if you want to go to college and for whatever reason you need to borrow in addition to whatever federal loans you could qualify for, if you could, you would go to a private lender, a financial institution. Is that what you're saying?
You pretty much
borrow
have
the
to.
money.
I mean, you pretty much have to. The way it works out is that over the course of a 4-year degree in a public college, there's about a $30,000 gap between what the federal government will lend you and what it's truly going to cost.
Yeah.
In a private college, that goes to about $110,000.
Right.
So you have to fill that gap somehow. And so you're in the private market. The question is, when you're in the private market, what type of loan do you take to fill that gap?
And how much interest you should pay. I mean, you guys, we've talked about these payday lenders and the concern that you all have had that people go into them. So let me put it this way. What should a consumer, a student, and their families look for when they go to a credit union, a bank, or whatever, to say, I want a loan? What advice would you give them?
Well, a couple different things. What type of financing suits their particular pocketbook? With private student loans, you can defer payments. If that's not an issue, if you can afford to make payments, home equity loans are a possibility. Although with home equity values dropping in some markets, that's becoming less of a factor. But interest rate is a big thing. Terms, as far as, when do the payments begin? How much will interest rates increase? When will they increase? What flexibility do the programs have would be some of the things I'd recommend looking at.
Do interest rates vary greatly from institution to institution, or is it so competitive that you're all trying to give, relatively low interest rates spread out over a longer period of time, or is that not?
I think interest rates vary dramatically.
Yeah.
You have to pay attention. It's almost any financing vehicle. Interest rates, if you don't pay attention, you're going to pay a higher rate. If you do shop around, you're going to be able to get a rate that's more affordable to you in the long run.
Yeah.
And I think another part of it, Terry, is the extent to which the parent is helping with the debt versus the student is paying his or her own debt. Because the federal loans, be they subsidized or unsubsidized, depending on your income level, are all at the same rate. So that, frankly, that piece is going to be the same no matter where you go.
Yeah.
The other piece, it's going to differ based on what type of loan, as Bob said, and what institution and what the rates are.
I mean, I really think that parents and students really have to think hard about the college they select, what kind of debt they want to assume, how valuable that is, and choose pretty wisely. And I know that I think we're going to see a larger number of folks involved in counseling. You all try to provide that kind of counseling? Is that something you do?
We have a person dedicated to student lending, and we have seminars that we offer for our members to come in and talk about student loan options, especially the private student loan, although they are very familiar with the federal guaranteed student loan options too.
Yeah, we have about 30 seconds left. You and I have talked about over the years what goes on in college, in high school classrooms, when you're talking to people about financial literacy. That might be something to consider. Maybe you do it now.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
You do it now?
Yes, we do, particularly with late juniors when they're starting to make that college choice.
All right, thanks for the great advice. Well, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, you stay well.